everyone, Comic Reviewer here, this time reviewing The World's End. Now, as you know, The World's End is a 2013 apocalyptic science fiction comedy film that was directed by Edgar Wright, who also gave us films like Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz. And keep in mind that, the film was the last film in the whole Cornetto trilogy film. And I think what the film tries to do that I think Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead never did was tackle a really sort of realistic setting about looking back at the past, nostalgia, and how we put rose-colored glasses on things. So the premise of the film is meant to follow Gary King, who is this immature, childish, 40-year-old alcoholic who decides to recapture his youth by going back to their old hometown of Newton Haven to redo their pub crawl, which was known as the Golden Mile, by going to 12 pubs of their hometown to reach the world's end. And we see how most of their friends have now matured, aged, as well as grew up. And we do kind of see how, his friend Andy tries to be realistic with Gary, despite it being a losing battle. And we still see how Gary still sees his life more like a little kid does. And the whole point of the film is meant to be about Gary trying to come to terms with his youth, looking back at the past, and as well as basically stopping to think if his past really was worth kind of going back to, or if it wasn't. And I think what the film gets right is showing how, Gary and Andy are polar opposites, because the whole point of Andy is, when you're younger, you're going to be immature, impulsive, and reckless, but when you get older, you try to be realistic, try to be understanding, as well as try to be realistic. Well, Gary is the sort of reminder that people will never age, mature, or will still see their life more like a little kid. And it's clear that, both Gary and Andy's friends have gone on to find their own places in life and try to find their own sort of kind of own their own sort of place they want to live now. And the whole point about moving and moving on in life is that sometimes you shouldn't really live back in the past, as it's already happened. And over the point of the sort of pub crawl, we do kind of see how Gary and his friends notice something strange going on, and the whole point of the film is basically Gary trying to come to terms with his past, himself, and looking back at it, thinking if it was really worth living back at again. And the whole point of the film is trying to remind you that, the past had flaws, it still does, and sometimes when people try to tempt you with things like remakes, continuations, as well as trying to taint you with things about looking back at it with rose-colored glasses, it's important to remember those things have happened, and sometimes the things that's happened in your past will never come back again. And sometimes it's important to accept that, you might move on as a person, but people will tempt you with going back at it with rose-colored glasses. And sometimes trying to face your problems realistically is trying to come to terms with who you are, and people trying to be the voice of reason to you. And I think the whole point of the film is that, we do kind of see how Gary, Andy, and their friends try to look back at the past, say, hey, do you remember that person? Do you remember that guy? Do you remember those people? But the thing is, they were people from their past who don't really have much of a memory with them. And sometimes, the things from your past are still there, but the things from your past that weren't there are never going to be really remembered. And it's clear Gary thought he left this big legacy, even though it's not really there. And it's just kind of clear that when the film's main villains try to tempt him with trying to relive his past, it's just clear Gary finally accepts that it's already been done. And sometimes, yeah, just because someone tempts you with something doesn't give them the right, the sort of place, as well as the kind of setting to put them, as well as you, on the spot where they think they're in the right. And sometimes not everyone is going to be in the right, despite some good intentions. So I think the whole point of the film is meant to be a bit like Silent Hill 2, trying to help basically Gary come to terms with his past, trying to show that, yeah, that sometimes looking back at the past with rose-colored glasses and trying to assume it was always good, always great, always this perfect thing will never happen. And sometimes, just because you might have left a legacy, it will quickly die down despite what you left. So I think this film definitely deserves a thumbs up. Still good, and still alright. So, Comic Reviewer here, signing out.